Good evening. I'd like to stand for the pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'd like to say thank you to all the veterans and their family for their sacrifice this evening. All right. At this time, we're going to open the public hearing for the fiscal 2022 budget hearing. I think, again, probably the best way to handle this is I'm going to turn this over to the city accountant. And if you'd like to just hit the highlighted and then hold our questions for the end, it might help speed up the process.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The information that you have in front of you is for the budget hearing for this evening. This is our third meeting regarding the FY22 budget. We've had two budget workshops. We had one on the 18th, one on the 27th, and this is our first official public hearing. Final adoption of the FY22 budget is scheduled for the regular council meeting. It's in the middle of this month. I think it's 14th, 15th, 15th. 15, yes. So I guess what I'll do is just kind of highlight where the additions were from the last budget workshop. I didn't do anything with the column as far as for any additional. I didn't reduce anything because after the end of the last meeting, we just added. We didn't reduce anything at this point. So with all of that being said, on page 2 of 5, in the very far right column, you'll see things that are highlighted in red, and that is where either a change has been made or a request has been made either by the mayor or council. But starting with the legislative expenditures for the mayor and council, we had an increase requested for the Sunflower Festival Committee from $1,000 to $2,500. We had the Beautification and Tree Committee increase from $14,000 to $45,000. There's been an increase, or I'm sorry, a decrease. Well, first there was a decrease and then a slight increase for capital for the purchase of a projector and a projection screen. At this point, I think that maybe, I don't know, if there is enough in that particular line item, then we could always look at a new mic system for the council. But there was an added printer requested by council. So you will see a slight increase from the last meeting to this meeting of $300. And under computers, a computer was requested for council, something that we can keep out here. I don't know where we'll put it, but somewhere out here that if council comes in to work on any projects, or if they need access to it during a committee meeting, that they'll have access to that outside of the offices, because the office doors are all closed after we leave. So there's a slight $1,000 increase there. Moving down, we didn't have any changes to general government. We didn't have any changes to the accounting expenditure. There were no changes to municipal court. Now the police department, which is on page 3, and that is the department number 320. The items that I just handed council was some of the things that they had asked at the last meeting was different salaries, starting pay from other police departments, other benefits that surrounding Do you have copies of them too? Okay. And we wanted to just get benefits information from other surrounding areas or neighboring communities, just to see if there was some sort of a comparison to what the city of Statham currently offers, and if there's any way that we could enhance that. So the information that we just handed them was, I think I have 3 different municipalities information regarding benefits, and the chief is handing out probably salaries, starting wages and all that type of starting salary information from 6 different municipalities. So it was a request from council at the last meeting because they just wanted to see what the surrounding areas were offering that we weren't, as a way for, better recruitment, more recruitment, and, for retention, employee retention. We didn't do anything with the salaries as far as the expenditure goes. We did increase it from last year's budget from $372,000. This is line 335, if you're following. From $372,000 to $460,000 for FY22, and this would be for a total staff, including officers and administrative personnel, to include 2 new hires and the compensation for the K-9 handler. Okay, at this time, we were using our current starting salary for the purposes of this particular allocation. If council elects to increase or change the benefits or the salaries for the police department, then we would have to increase the salaries line item to offset any additional compensation. One item that we did discuss at the last meeting was to add back the POA&B, and we put $2,100 in for that. With the addition of, now that is with 7, that is for 7 officers at their $25 per pay period. So that's per month, yes. But that shouldn't need changed. I think the $2,100 is right on target with a total of 7 officers. And the other potential line item is that it's on line 413. We had added, I had added to that, I added the interceptor monthly payments on that, which is why that is showing in red. I didn't have any other changes in the police department other than that from the last meeting. Moving down to the Public Works Department, there was an increase from the salary from the last meeting from $220,000 to $255,000, and this is to hire 2 additional staff for a total of 7 in the Public Works Department. Currently, we have 4. We are trying to replace a vacancy, and then the 2 additional would be a total of 7. Moving down, we did add $1,200 in line 464 for the electricity of the tornado sirens. Now, we have already been paying the electricity bill for the siren, but it's been minimal. I think it's just been the minimum fees that they charge us just to have it on, whether or not we're using the electricity or not. But we added $1,200 for the electricity for that. And then we increased the personnel expense. The personnel expense for Public Works is 7 staff members in the Public Works Department at $150 each reimbursement for uniforms. The Public Works guys are out there, they're getting dirty all the time, they're staining up their clothes, they're tearing up their t-shirts, they're going through 2 or 3, sets of boots a year, and as a way to add just a little bit of a cost benefit to the Public Works Department. We are allotting $150 per member of the Public Works Department to get reimbursed for the purchase of boots and so on. One item that we are going to be adding in the Public Works Department under the safety equipment is shoring equipment that is on line 471. Now, this is not something that has moved from the previous budget hearings, but I did just want to state that that is a safety piece of equipment. It is an expensive piece of equipment, but especially if anybody in the Public Works Department are down inside of repairing lines or water mains, the shoring equipment is truly for their protection. There have been incidences, and very recently, where a gentleman was killed by getting trapped inside of a hole as he was repairing some pretty deep water lines, and it had caved in on him. So I believe this type of equipment will help prevent that from ever happening to our Public Works Department. Under capital, under line 475, we did have an increase of $6,000, and that is for additional expenditures to get the tornado siren up and running. I think we're still waiting to get an estimate on the cost of that. That's not until the next fiscal year. So Councilmember McCormick stated that he believed that would be a good number, the $6,000. And under line 477, machinery and equipment, that's the very last line on page 3. Initially, what the Public Works Department was asking for was a Mini X and to lease a new dump truck for the Public Works Department. They do have the limb truck, which can be utilized as a dump truck. They serve as two different purposes, but I guess one of the items that the Public Works Department would like to have is a dump truck. Doesn't have to be new, new to them, dump truck. But after the last meeting, what council had selected to do was to keep the lease for the Mini X, and it would be a lease. It wouldn't be paying all of it up front. As you may remember, we have the backhoe and the skid steer that we had leased over a period of 5 years and paid it off, because they're between one piece of equipment was $67,000, another piece of equipment was $83,000, and we just paid it off over the course of 5 years. So with the Mini X, we would do the same thing. So they would be monthly payments. How I got the monthly payment for that was I basically took the cost of one of the previous pieces of equipment that the department purchased there in 2016, the backhoe, and just kind of guesstimated on how much it cost, and I took the monthly payment of that and just applied it to this year's budget. In lieu of a dump truck lease, based on the last meeting, we will not be doing the lease for the dump truck for this current fiscal year, but instead buy a work vehicle for the Public Works Department, especially if the council would like to hire 2 additional staff to go into Public Works. We're already short vehicles, and we had 2 employees that were always riding together because we didn't have a vehicle for that particular employee to go out on his own and do the work that he needed to do. So purchasing a truck, in addition to the fleet that the department already has. If we hire 2, I think we'll still be down 1 vehicle, but it's better than being down 2. Now, moving on to page 4. There was, on the very top line, it's line 479. And there was an addition of $150,000 for sidewalk and crosswalk repair, maintenance, or just to put in new sidewalks. And it was discussed to put in sidewalks along Hammond Road from Smith to Broad and 8th and to the end of Peters Street. And we did $125,000 plus a $25,000 contingency, because once you get started on something like that, you just don't know how much it's going to end up. We decreased on line 45. We decreased the contingency from $10,000 down to $7,500. not much of a difference, but we didn't, as of to date, as of 6/1, we have not used any contingency from FY '21 for the Public Works Department, which is a good thing. We don't want to use it if we don't have to. But it is good to have a contingency just in case if something arises that we don't have allotted in another line item. We didn't do anything with the community centers, which is Department 553. We did increase the recreation expenditure in Department 610 from $10,000 to $15,000. And then under the parks expenditure, that is Department 620, on line 529, we did increase the general supplies and materials from $500 to $24,000 for playground equipment. Now, if it's also in the notes, it says create a capital line item, because playground equipment is not general supplies and maintenance, but at the time when we were discussing the budget there at last week's meeting, it was just a place for us to place that for budgeting purposes. So whatever is approved in that line item will be moved to a capital account. Under the library expenditure, that is Department 650, and you will see an increase on line 552 from $61,600 to $70,000. And what we did with that is, in the past, the city has paid for the library's utility expenses, and we also did not charge them for any of their water and sewer. The city also paid for their phone service, and I believe the only utility that we did not pay was the internet, and I believe that's because they get that through a grant, or that's paid for by the internet provider, one or the other. But what we decided to do beginning with fiscal year 22 is we decided to basically take the average of what the city has been paying in the expenditures for their utilities and phone service, combining all of that and just adding that to the intergovernmental agreement that we have with the library. We usually give them quarterly payments. As you see, last year we gave them $45,900 broken up into quarterly payments, and that's just to help offset the operational expenses for the library. Instead of the city paying all of their bills individually, the gas bill, the electric bill, by not charging them the water and the sewer bill, and then their phone service bill, we just decided that we wanted to combine that, add that to the total intergovernmental amount, and then let them pay their own bills. There are a couple number of reasons for that. One being because we just thought that it would just hold everybody more accountable for either water that they're using, sewer that they're using, electricity, heat, gas, and so on. One of the things that we had to do in this last year's budget is we actually had to, when we did an amendment, we actually went over budget on those expenses for FY21. So when we did the amended budget, we had to correct that amount to reflect what was actually being used and not what we originally budgeted. But this way, it's kind of like, I guess my daughter being moved out of the house, and she's going to really pay attention to what she has that AC set on when the money's coming out of her own pocket versus mom's pocket. So I guess the same principle, applies to that. Under Department 720, we did not change that line item 5 on 561. We did not change anything with planning and zoning. We did not change anything with the code enforcement expenditure. So if you look at line 582, the total general fund expenditure as of today would be $2,574,775. Moving down to the SPLOST fund expenditure, which is Department 320. We did not change that from the last meeting, and that that budget total is $80,000 for that particular fund. And under the utility fund, which is Fund 520, under Fund 520 we have sewer lines, water lines, and spring. And going down on line 597, that is sewer expenditure, Department 431. There were no changes to that department. Moving down to sewer lines expenditure, there were no changes to that department. And to Department 443, and it's the last section on page 4, there were no changes to that either from the last meeting. And on the last page, line 689, under infrastructure for the well development, there was an increase in that particular line item from $312,000 to $425,000. And one of the other items that we did increase from the second budget workshop, not from the last meeting, but is for line 694 under water treatment. We actually had to increase that to $10,000. And that is due to the Solar Bee annual maintenance agreement, that kind of coincides with the Tank Pro annual maintenance agreement, which is right underneath that for the water distribution. Each year, our water system just needs to be maintained on an annual basis, and everything needs to be, the structure needs to be checked, whether it's the tower, the water tower, or other infrastructure. And I needed to add the $10,000 Solar Bee annual maintenance back to the budget because the city's intention is to get the water plant back up and running to where we do not have to purchase so much water from Winder or the county. Moving down into Department 444, there were no changes to the water lines expenditure. And under the spring, there were also no changes. So the total utility fund expenditures total as of today is $2,127,650,000, $2,127,650,000. Also, not trying to go back to the very beginning, but there were no changes to the revenue from the last meeting either. So with that being said, on the very bottom of page 5, and you'll see where it says total budget in the bolded section down at the bottom. And if you look under the latest column, which says FY22 number 3, so the total revenue for FY22 is estimated to be $5.008 million, and the total expenditures to be $4.782, with a difference of $226,000. However, we need to subtract from the total revenue the SLOSS 2018 revenue that we will collect, because we will not be using that in the next fiscal year. So after you subtract the SLOSS 2018 from the total revenue, it takes it down to $4,433,225. And as of right now, our total expenditures with the increases from the last meeting is $4,782,425, with a difference of $349,200 being over. So with that, I will turn it back over to council to start discussing what we would like to do.
Thank you. First question.
Well, there's a lot of projects in this budget. And as I understand it, we're $340,800 in the red as it stands, am I correct?
Yes, sir. 349.
So in order to have a balanced budget, we really, I think, have a couple options. We either have to cut. There's a possibility of using fund balance of the bank to cover the shortfall.
Well, we really, of the fund balances that we have in the bank, the majority of our bank accounts are restricted, so they're only to be used for certain items. Not saying that if there is an account that we can offset that cost with, we can move that balance of that account and put it into the general fund so we can use it. But that would be something that we would have to vote on. On the sheet that I just, that's in front of you, the account balance sheet, those are a list of all of our bank accounts. And if there is something that maybe you have a question on what that account is restricted to, we can talk about that as well.
A couple of things as I was looking over it. I mean, everybody's got their projects and things they want done. And a couple of things I was looking over earlier as we sat down was possibly cut out some of the contingency out of the departments. If I have it correct, we have about $72,500 budgeted total for contingency. If we cut that to $20,000 for what in legislative, that's $52,500 there.
Under, is that line 250?
Just contingency in general, in total all of them up.
Oh,
Line 250, 409, 485,
409, I'm trying to follow you here.
sorry.
Okay. 409,
If you look at the lines, 250 is on page 2. And then 409, we have $10,000 in contingency, and that should be on page 3. There's line 485, which is a contingency, which is on page 4. $7,500 there.
There's a $25,000 contingency in the sidewalk project, which is line 479.
to
Page
take that
4.
down to 125.
Is that?
We added a $25,000 contingency. So it was $125,000.
It was 120,
120.
based on the bids that we got, but I mean, we can make that 10,000 and
I'm gonna take that to 130.
yeah, make it 130.
Well, I mean, these are just suggestions of trying to do this thing to balance, and then we can go back after we start making this and we might have to look, I guess, the projects. The only other option I know of is to sit back to the departments and have basically everything cut 10%, every department.
Well, on the sidewalks, at the expense of being the bad guy, according to our charter 1.04, the city's not responsible for sidewalks. It is the responsibility of the homeowner. So that's based on our charter. So I know it's nice to do that. It's nice to be able to add, but that's just what I've found trying to, look where we can make improvements or make cuts necessary.
With the sidewalks that I'm looking at, we're an oversight from the development of that side of town where the responsibility for the construction of the sidewalks fell on the builder. And during the inspection, the builder was not holding the inspector, we were using the county back in 2000, so the county was not holding the builder accountable for the sidewalks in front of the homes where we're proposing. So, yes, we're responsible for it, but it was an oversight in our, in the city's inspection process. And, we've been without sidewalks over there for 20 years, and I think the citizens, need and deserve the sidewalks, and we can, you know, while we're talking about cuts, and we're talking about, where we can cut, the police department's budget is up over $300,000 from last year. The very first, before we amended the police department's budget last year was about $685 or $650. I can't remember. That number's not in front of us, but
You requested and they were printed on these. You asked for fiscal 18, 19, 20, and 21.
I got them.
Okay. And they would say what the budget was.
Right.
Uh,
So, I think we need to look at a whole lot of stuff. I think we need to look at maybe dropping one officer and one vehicle. And I talked to Ms. Plank, and I briefly talked to the chief about this. So if we drop one officer and one fully outfitted vehicle, that's gonna net $77,500.
But I think Governor Kemp
so-
did sign a thing about defunding police no more than 10%. So
Well,
are we
this is
going
not-
to defund the police department? Is that what you're doing?
No, we're not defunding the police department.
Because
And I said earlier, I told the chief and everyone on staff that I fully support the police department and everything that's going on at the police department. But the rate of growth that the police department is going at it is what I find unacceptable. And all I'm stating are some facts about the police department's budget, nothing about defunding the police department whatsoever. So, and back to that, I mean, so if we took the $77,000 from the one officer and the one vehicle and redistributed that back through the budget, we need to look at incentivizing the police department as a whole and the public works as a whole, and start looking at why we're losing employees and why we're losing these key people in each department. We lost an operator, we lost one of our best officers, and we're talking about $1,000 here and $1,000 there. And I think at least half of this money that I'm talking about can stay in the police department. But I think there's a lot we can look at.
The reason we are losing employees is because we're building sidewalks and they going somewhere else so they can get paid more. Now, sidewalks are nice. You and me rode for a couple of hours the other day. Before we keep building sidewalks, we need to take care of the ones that we've already got. They're grown over, you can't walk on them, they're broken. We need to take care of that. And we need to get these salaries up so when people come here and we give them a job, they want to stay.
I agree.
And there's nothing in the budget, not even a percentage, across the board for anybody. And I think that's where we need to be looking. They hired a guy the other day for the street department. Jordan said they thought he was going to be great. You know what? Somebody else offered him a little bit more. He's not coming to work here.
And that's precisely what I'm talking about. You know, that we could start raising the minimum salaries of the people that are already here doing service to the city. We can raise that immediately.
We could do that.
So it wouldn't be defunding the police at all. It
And we
would
can
actually
take
be
one
supporting
section of
the
town.
police department, at the same time, taking a look at where we're spending this money.
Well, let's take a look at where we want to. We can do one section of town
Yes, ma'am.
and fix those sidewalks. Next budget year, we do another. We don't have to do it all at one time. We need to take care of the people we got first.
I agree.
In my discussion with the police department, it's not just about salaries, it's also about workload. And that was one of the things that Chief told me, when he did his exit interviews with, the officers that have left, is the workload of, the police that we have. And, if you got people that are working and every time somebody's out sick, they're having to pull a double shift, or they're having to come in on their off days, that creates a problem for our employees. Additionally, it's my understanding without hiring 2 new officers, we won't have 24/7 coverage, which is our goal. We can either play at having a police department, or we can have a police department nothing. And if we're not going to, fully fund it, I know it's expensive, but law enforcement is always the most expensive portion of any government. You can check other governments. Any of them around here, it's always the most expensive. There's not a financial return on investment on that. You're not going to get the amount of money you put into it return financially. But what you will see is a cleaner city, one that's safer and one that's cleaner. That's been proven if you have a full-time police force. I still stand by the fact that I want to keep the police department's budget fully funded. Obviously, we do have to make some cuts, but I don't want to see us make cuts at the expense of losing an officer.
I would like to point out again that officers are not coming to Statham because the incentive is not here. There's not enough pay, there's not enough benefits. I think the biggest draw to our police department is the chief and the staff that he's been able to assemble. The people, the officers that are here, they want to be here. And we need to cultivate that, and I think we need to, we just need to look at where we're spending the money in the police department. And to that point, I would like to go to page 5 at the very bottom. And there's a difference in the second column of the fiscal year 21 actual expenditures. There's $1.239 million that we haven't used. Or can we talk about that for a minute, April?
On which line, like the FY21 actual?
Page 5, second column, very bottom.
Okay. The $1,245,067?
Well, I got 239 on mine,
Okay.
but,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I entered a couple of additional expenditures.
So if we're on a percentage basis, or if we're looking at 11 months of this money being expended, what is this, 6? Why do we have such a big difference in the actual expenditures?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is that if you just look at the green column and there is a 0 in the column to the right of the green, it will show you whether or not we've used any of that budget. As an example, under 445 on line, on page 5, we have used 0 of the professional services that we budgeted for. Moving up onto Department 444, we have not used any of that contingency, nor have we used any of the professional services. Moving up to Department 443, we have used 0 of that contingency, and we have also used 0 of the water treatment. Let's see, moving on to page 4. Under, on line 616, we have not used any of that rental equipment. Under sewer expenditures, Department 431, we have not used any of the professional services.
The line item.
That would be line 597. And another item that we did not remove from the last budget was line 600. And that is the ARC grant that we budgeted $968,000 for. If you continue moving up, let's see. Under Public Works Department on page, I guess it would be page 4, again, we have not used any of their contingency, and that is line 485.
So April, it's safe to say that the bulk of that's probably $968,000.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, it's safe to say the bulk of that was the $968,000 that we have for the ARC grant.
The budget.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I mean,
So-
without spending too much time looking at where the differences all lie.
So technically, there would be roughly 260,000 or so that differences that I went to. Because part of the art grant we didn't receive.
Well, we had to budget that we were going to spend that money.
Right.
Because that was part of the plan, is that development, we were gonna begin that development, we were gonna receive the part of that grant, the $300,000 grant towards the project. We was gonna have to come up with $312,000, but council elected to just, do away with that project and eliminate that agreement. So, but it was still showing as an expenditure. But also, I want to, we have a budget for, for a multitude of reasons. One, so we can live within our means, and two, we have on paper what the council has decided where to spend the money. Now, when it comes to a budget, I really don't, yes, we want to try to stay as close to budget as possible. Just because, we just want to. But if we don't spend money, that's not such a bad thing. Now I know that personal finances are different from government finances, but if I budget $5,000 a month for my mortgage and car payments and kids and everything else, and I only spend $4,000, I'm not going to hurry up and go and try to spend $1,000 on the last day of the month just to make sure I break even on my budget. I'm going to put that $1,000 away and save it for another project or whatever. And so I don't want you to think that it's necessarily a bad thing to be under budget. We're not allowed to go over budget, but to be under budget, that is not such a bad thing, because then that money basically goes back into the general fund, and then we have that to work with for the next year. But
I got a quick question. So, what is the difference in expenditures outlook going to look like when we approve this next month? We're going to have 300,000.
as far as being under, or
I'm just talking about including the ARC.
Well, taking the ARC out, that program is gone. that there's roughly $270-some thousand difference between the 1.2 million and, just removing that 968, because that project is defunct. So it's $270-some thousand difference, not 1.2 million.
So
On
we
that
take the
line item.
270,000 and we take the contingencies out that we spoke about. How's that gonna look for
I'm
balance?
actually adding, I'm
So
trying
it's
to
about
add that up
300,000
as we speak.
roughly.
So I'm trying to put in all of the numbers to see where we are. Well, we're not changing anything in the utility fund at this point, unless I was removing the contingency from all of that as well? Or are we talking about the general fund?
Well, we were just talking about, I was just looking at the total amount of contingencies across the entire budget of $72,500. And if we kept just $20,000 for contingency, that would be, that's $52,500. That we could possibly cut right there without having to cut a department. I think that would give us to right around $288,300. In the red.
I know you're looking at me to do this, but I'm trying to. Now, even with the changes that we just made, we're still 306,000 that we need to figure out. So we went from 349 to 306. But I'm talking for this upcoming fiscal year, FY '22.
Right. Now,
I think, but I don't know that I've got everything in that you want me to take out, like,
now,
like all of the contingencies.
now, are you showing 349, 800 at the bottom? Ours says 340, that's what I was.
Okay, no, I'm showing 349.
Okay.
Okay, that's, yes, I had to make a couple of changes today to, so, if you look online, out of curiosity, if you look online, 101, that would be on, I guess, page 2. What are you showing, I'm trying to figure out where our difference is and what change I have made. Under general fund revenue, got 1,652,466. Under, the FY '22 public hearing on line 101.
I think your lines may be different there, maybe.
No, what's your,
Oh,
on the left? No?
there isn't a line there. I'm looking at my Excel line. On page 2, at the very top.
Our 101 is on page 1.
So,
On page 2, at the very, very top.
Okay.
that's total revenue.
Yes, under the FY '22, workshop 2, or, I'm sorry, FY '22 public hearing. See that column?
Mhm.
Right here. All right. My general fund revenue I have is 1,652,466.
Okay.
All right. Utility fund revenue, I have $1,976,074.
Correct.
Fund 320 revenue, 575,450.
Correct.
Revenue budget subtotal, $4,203,990.
Correct.
Subtract what we're not using, that's the 2018 slot that we're collecting, 575,450.
Correct.
All right. Revenue budget total, $3,628,540.
540. Correct. Yeah.
Okay, add back the assets that we are using at $804,685 for $4,433,245.
Correct.
Okay, so we're on the same page there. So then we know it is in the expenditures.
I wanna put something in here real quick. We are anticipating the sale of the Public Works building, and there's $150,000 that's not in the bottom line also.
No, I have not included any of that in revenue. That would be considered a sale of assets.
And then that would require
I mean,
a budget amendment, right? Like
I
we
mean,
did for,
we can budget that we're going to sell that building and that we're going to budget that we're going to get $150,000 for it, but, I wasn't aware that that was going to be a thing. So I can add that in here, if that's good. Now, I did put Public Works Building possible sale. This is on line 50.
That was
But I did not include the sale of that. I just put $2,000 in there because we just sell general items throughout the year. You know, whether, you know, we sold bookshelves and we sold chairs and we sold, you know, littler things like that. So if you would like for me to put in $150,000, I'll be more than happy to do that.
All right, so if our bottom line difference was negative $349,800, we cut $52,500 out of contingency. That should put us at $297,300 difference, which, I mean, that's $297,300, and we're still in the red. I think what Councilmember McCormick was, maybe I'm wrong, but I think what he was trying to ask earlier was, the difference from fiscal year 21 actual, which was, if you take out ARC, that should come to right around $272,000. We have an estimate of what money is going to go forward, like the amount of money that we're expecting in revenues that were not spent.
Do we currently? I mean, I guess I'm not understanding what,
I guess what I'm asking is, what are we expecting not to spend from total amount of revenues not spent from fiscal year 21 actual?
what revenues are we planning on not spending of the revenues that we've collected in FY '21?
Right.
Wow. I don't think that I have an answer for that. I can't say specifically what portion of the revenue we're not going to be spending for a specific portion of the expenditure, because it's not divvied out that way, you know. So for the revenue that we collect $1.5 million, and we take all of those funds collectively and distribute them throughout the expenditure. So I don't know how to come up with that answer. I guess I don't know what you're asking. I mean,
Well, I mean, we were just looking at like contingencies that weren't spent. And I know that we got the rest of the month to go, but, you know, unless a catastrophe happens, then a lot of the stuff is not going to.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we don't want to spend contingency if we don't have to.
Right.
But the whole purpose for having a contingency is, like this water line that was out here on the corner that busted, you know, that was money that we can use for the, contingency if we run out of money in, sewer repairs. Or what is that other one that you guys just did there a couple weeks ago? Yes, is that what it was?
Yeah.
That was an unexpected expenditure. We were not planning on that water main to break. So the cost of those repairs, if we had already used repairs and maintenance throughout the year, that would allow the city to be able to fix that line without having to amend the budget.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, we're roughly $300,000 in the red if we take the contingency out of fiscal year 22. Is it possible to use balance forward
No.
from fiscal year 21?
No. At the end of this fiscal year, it's basically like we're starting over.
Right.
As of June 30th, any money that was left over, in the budget that was not used, it does not get rolled over into next year. It stops. The slate is wiped clean, and we start over.
So we can't use fund balance at all to balance the budget?
Well, it depends on.
If you get in trouble.
It,
Really, that's all you should have your fund balance for, is that if you get in trouble and need that, that's why you have it.
Right, but the city really doesn't, the fund balances that we have come from our SLOSS. So like the revenue that we're going to collect for the SLOSS in FY '22, we're not going to expend that in FY '22. That gets put into a fund balance for when it's there for when we need it, which is to be used to pay for the sewer bonds. It might be 2 years down the road by the time that we get to utilizing the 2018 SLOSS dollars that we collect. So.
Well, I mean, I wasn't referring to SLOSS. I know SLOSS is in mark. I was just referring to, any money that was left over that wasn't expended for like water and sewer or the general fund, that sort of thing. That's what I was trying to ask.
No, I guess like Debbie says, you typically don't want to use what is left over if you don't have to, unless it's an emergency, or unless there's a project that council wants to do a couple of years down the road, and then we take that fund, we take the fund balance and apply that to a particular project, you know, that you guys may want to do later.
Is there a way to utilize, to spend the money in the next month? That some of the items that we have budgeted for 22, is there a way that we can spend the money? Let's say we're getting 2 new police trucks. Is there a way to buy the trucks in 21 instead, and then pull the cost of those trucks out of the 22 budget? That way we don't end up with $350,000 left over in the fiscal year. We utilize everything that's budgeted.
Possibly. Now, if I am saying this correctly, or if I remember correctly, the mayor has the authority to be able to move money between funds or between departments. So, in that instance, if there's $10,000 in contingency that we have not used and we need to move that into repairs and maintenance, he has the authority to be able to do that. So, but we would need to keep it, we would at least need to try to keep it in the same department.
Okay. There's an option.
Just so I understand, this fiscal 2022 hearing number 3, is that not going on, for lack of a better word, the assumption that 21 is already over and those monies are already considered in the general fund and that's being divvied up and we're still short 349? Because isn't there that safe assumption that that is exactly what we're doing? So we're saying, okay, there's roughly $277,000 left over, because if you take out the $968,000 that was for the art project, that's no more. That's a difference of roughly $277,000. But when you do the next year's budget, aren't you kind of saying that even though it's not over, those funds have already been put into the general fund, so to speak, and you're working from those numbers, or am I misunderstanding something?
The way that I understand it, and this is just from working with the auditors, at the end of the year, there may be a balance forward, right, which would mean something that was not spent. But it does not go into the current, whatever budget that is for the next year automatically. Right. So, in a way, yes, it does kind of get put back into what you're suggesting, just basically the general fund.
Yeah.
But it's not sitting there to be used.
But my question is, isn't this, when you're doing the budget hearing, you're basically saying you have a pool of money that you expect to come in, and you have expenditures that you expect to occur.
Yes.
So, saying it that way, it's as though 2021 is already gone, and you're zeroed out.
Yes.
Even though we're not yet, because we still have 3.5 weeks or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So if
There-
we
by
take
the
that
end-
money, and whether we spend it now, there's still gonna be a deficit here that we have to deal with.
For FY '22.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
I apologize, I guess I just don't understand where we're going with whatever's left in FY '21, when if there is anything left at the end of this year that we have not expended, they said, it doesn't get rolled over automatically into the FY '22.
Right, and that's through 277.
If that's what you're coming up with.
It is
then-
approximately 80,000 in all of these contingencies that we haven't spent. Approximately 80,000 of what my estimate of 277,000, 80,000 of that is all in the contingencies.
Okay,
So even if you just say, okay, all of the contingencies and what is left over right now, that we have to play with, if we have a surplus of 277,000.
so you're saying that we can move an expenditure that's in FY '22?
No, I'm saying even if we spend the 270,000 before the end of this month,
Okay,
we're still contending with a deficit. May not be a full 349, but
you mean
we're
for
still
FY '21?
FY 2022, we've got a deficit of 349 and 200, okay? It shows that we've got a plus of 1.2 million that we haven't spent. But you have to take out the ARC, which is defunct anyway.
Right,
And so the difference there is roughly 277,000. And of that, 80,000 is contingencies that we haven't spent. So
okay,
even if we spend, let's just say for sake of argument, my math is 100% correct.
okay,
Even if we spend 277,000 on things that we would like to have in 2022, there's still a deficit that we're gonna have to contend with.
Not if those items are taken out.
Well, yeah, but if you say it's 277,000, we have a deficit of 349. Even if we can spend the 277, do the math. 277 off of the 349 is still roughly a $75,000 deficit that we haven't filled that gap. Even if we could spend that 277 before the end of June. That's all I'm trying to clarify, both for me and anyone else that might have a question.
I have a question on,
One second.
I'm looking at this last page here, and correct me if I'm wrong, April. At the last planning session, which was last week, we were really only $3,000 off from being a balanced budget, correct?
well, yes, yes,
Okay, and at that budget hearing, we had council folks adding in their special prep projects with a couple other things, brought us up to $349,200.
correct.
Why don't we just make it so much simpler, take those pet projects out, let's work on that $3,000 deficit, and when we get through this fiscal year, we'll be a whole lot better off, we can do some of those things next fiscal year. They're making it really difficult, because instead of taking out your pet projects that you all stuck in last time, you want to take money out of everything else, the contingencies and all of that. What if we have a major catastrophe that's going to cost the city a lot of money to repair because you took all the contingencies out? We won't have it. I think we need to go back and take out all that stuff we put in last week, get this balanced budget, and let's just focus on getting this year accomplished. You're just making it really hard for yourself, and you're taking out things that have value to the rest of the citizens. That's my input. I think you're making this very difficult.
I
It's very
understand
difficult for
your,
citizens to sit here and listen to you decide, well, let's not do that police car, and let's not do this, but we still have a contingent, or a plan in there for a lot of extra money being spent that I don't know really needs to get spent this year as a citizen of the city, because my personal safety comes above anything else that has to do with how pretty the city looks and whether there's sidewalks for people to walk on right now. We gotta keep our police department funded, and to be scooting stuff around to satisfy that you guys can keep your pet projects in is wrong. And I just want that on the record.
well, the pet project, my sidewalk pet project is directly related to public safety.
Yes, but isn't your pet project something that you promised in a campaign 4 years ago?
I
This is a
promise-
campaign year, and I understand that, but I think you're allowing that to overshadow what the purpose of the budget is for this city, Councilman. I really think you need to take a step back and think about that, because I've looked at those streets, there's no way. Sorry.
Thank you.
Well, the sidewalk project is directly related to public safety. It's as important to me as the police department or any other thing in the public safety sector of what the mayor and council does. If you encounter someone on the sidewalks that I'm proposing, walking in the street with the babies and a stroller or something from the dollar store, and you have to swerve over, you know, that's a very important public safety issue. Sidewalks keep people safe. It increases home values. It increases the walk score. It increases the value when people look at homes. You know, they see people walking on the sidewalks and not on the street. It does so much more. It does so much more for our community than just pouring a sidewalk. I think the value should be looked at, you know, very closely because we've got 100 homes. We've got over 100 homes in that neighborhood where we're proposing. So I don't think it's a pet project at all. I think it's something that needs to be done.
Well, one of the increases from last time is pretty significant, and it is a pet project of mine, is the well development. And it was originally budgeted for $425,000, which you can see was in the third column of that budget. And then it was cut to $312,000. And I did ask for that to be put back in there to $425,000. I believe that it is critical for the city to have that done. So, you know, I'll take the heat over that being a pet project, because it is, and I'll stand by it. I think that we need it. There's plenty of pet projects in here, honestly, before the council even started. And there's quite a bit that we can look at and cut. I mean, there's stuff in community centers and everything else that really don't have to be done this year. The truth is that every budget, been doing this for a long time, every budget always has some kind of project in it that's important to people. And that varies from person to person, and people get passionate about that. I would like to see, you know, some of the stuff go back to the community. I would like to see beautification in the community for people to enjoy. You know, is there things that's going to have to be cut? Absolutely, there's things going to have to be cut. There's things, in my opinion, are more critical than other items that are in this budget. But, you know, we're at the point now to where we're going to have to decide, you know, roughly $349,000, how we're going to budget that. Some people are going to see things of giving back to the community as more important than other items in this budget, and that's what we're trying to do, is hammer it out. But as it stands right now, we're not making much headway. We're, you know, several hours in, and we haven't agreed on, you know, the first cuts. So the challenge here, especially with a long agenda, is what are we going to do? We have one more budget hearing after this, and we're still basically $350,000 in the red. So what are we going to do? Are we going to ask the departments to, you know, cut across the board 10%? That's what we used to have to do back when I was working in government. The board would send it back and say, cut across every department X percent. Are we going to cut out some of these projects? So we got to figure it out. We're running out of time here.
Just a quick question. When you say a 10% cut across the board, are we talking salaries and everything?
What we ended up having to do was take everything except for salaries, and basically not cut every line on 10%, but let the department make the decision of what they want to cut to reach that 10% threshold to make the budget balance.
So we're gonna add the $150,000 for the sale of the house.
Where do you get 150? Is that a guess?
Well, yeah, this whole budget is a guess.
Well, you have a,
And
not
I'll
so
get
much
to
guess, but
item 84 in just a minute. We'll talk about that guess.
84.
Yeah. When we go to line item 84, page 1. So we're estimating 55 new homes. Well, there's a subdivision on Providence that has at least that many homes in it, and we have several developers with bills on the books already. So is that an accurate number, or can we take a look at that number?
Sure. Now, any.
So I think there's 80 lots in Lexus Statham.
76.
76 lots, just in one subdivision.
Yeah.
Right. Now, you are correct that we have several new things that are up and coming for the FY22, but from a budgetary standpoint, not all of those homes are going to be permitted and built in FY22. So, just doing the best of our ability and to what we believe will be completed in FY22, we estimated 55 new residential homes at the average permit of $960. The permit fees are based on a large number of different things. The value of the home, the square footage of the home. It's really just kind of a case-by-case basis. You know, when it comes to planning and zoning, we really can only do the very best of what we can do. I mean, like I put in here that we have 4 preliminary plats that we're going to be approving in FY22. It might only be 2. It might be 6. I just don't know, but I'm just basing all of that. You know, like the rezones, annexations, and variances on line 61. I have it specifically. I have 6 rezones, 6 variances, and 1 annexation. Do I know for sure that that's what's going to happen? No, I don't. I'm just,
Right.
you know, 3 final plats. Now, I have 3 final plats that will be approved in FY22. Of those 3 final plats, how many of their homes, or we'll say whatever, I mean, how many of their homes are going to be completed in FY22? So after the final plat gets approved, then they have to go through the development permit, and they're going to have to do the grading and the grubbing, and then they're going to, you know, so it's a long process. So yes, we have lots of developments coming in, but we really just tried to guesstimate to the best of our ability how many were going to be completed in FY22.
So if I'm looking at the second column in line 84 correct, we've had 15 new homes.
No, we have had $15,414 in new construction permits.
Okay. And that's based on your price at $960. That would be.
That's after inspection, that was for free profited.
Right, okay, so, yes, those are also inspection fees. Now, we do have, we have plumbing and sewer line and electrical separated and mechanical permits separated. But to answer your question, no, that does not mean that 15 new homes have went in.
Okay.
Those are just permits, and based on, my $960 average permit is basically looking at the last couple of years in that particular line item and just guesstimating as how much of a permit is going to cost.
Okay. So, how many homes did you say we had on the books, Mayor, 270, 300?
76 at Lakes of Statham, about 10 along 211, 50 at Ellington Farms, and the other one at,
If you look on page, or if you look on line 114 on page 1.
Yes. Caps?
You can also look on line 120 on page 1. And
Okay,
we approximated 30 homes to be completed by the end of FY '22 in Lakes of Statham, 10 in Jackson Estates, 15 in Ellington, 10 in Glen Abbey, 25 in Springside. Those are water taps. We base a lot of it on whether or not we're going to be receiving, the water taps or the sewer taps. Sewer taps, we estimated 30 homes in Lakes of Statham, 10 in Jackson Estates, and 15 in Ellington Farms.
okay.
Can we increase that? Sure, but,
those are realistic guesstimations, because we.
I mean, we spent a lot of time going over all this, coming up with what we believe is a fair judgment on the amount of revenue that we're gonna bring in, because we don't want to overextend ourselves.
So, 55 homes, roughly 25% of what is in the works right now. Realistically, 25 to 30% of the homes that could be built, they're not going to be built in 12 months. So,
I mean, they may not be, it depends on how long their process.
with the 5 or 6 developments, you have so many in each development, and 55 homes would be 25% to 30% build out. And if it's more, it's to the benefit of the city. If it's
Right.
less, then our budget is affected accordingly.
Right.
So, all right. So 55 is probably not a bad guess then. Well,
I'm just saying, this is all a guesstimate. That was
It
the point earlier about the 150,000. That's a pretty reasonable price for that public works building. I think it would bring 150 all day in this market, so, anybody disagree?
well, I just got an estimate, but I can't print it out and I can't pull it up because I can't get a signal. But I think it was around 175, 178.
Okay. Well, that's even
If
better.
we sell it the way it is.
Right.
So no, it's not unreasonable.
Okay.
More than I thought.
So I added, I took out this, I added the sale of the public works building. That would be under line 50. Sale of assets. Because that's where the funds go. Which takes our revenue to $5,158,675. Then we have to,
You see, you got
So realistically, after you pay
commission.
your stuff, you're probably looking at somewhere around 160 realistically that you could put in the budget. Because the house went for 120, but after stuff was 108, I believe, next door.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I was just crunching some numbers on departments under 10%, excluding the salaries, if you go to the beginning, if you start at, general government, I did not touch the court system, the police department, public works, went on to, sewer expenditure, 431, 433, 443, and 444, 445 at the 10%. That's right around $325,137.
Okay, you're gonna have
There were
to
some
go,
entities I didn't touch.
you're gonna have to go slower than that so all of us can see what you're cutting.
Okay, so I'll go back. So if you start at, 150, excluding salaries, I subtracted that out.
150
The next department,
line item or,
what I did is I took the bottom minus the salaries out. And then if you take 10%, from there, that's $22,185.
hit me with that number again, 100.
22,185. But basically what I'm saying is if you do the math and don't touch the salaries, you subtract that from the bottom line, you times it by 10%, that will give you what that department has to subtract. So I, once again, did the general government, the police department, then moved on to public works, 420. Moved over to, moved over to department 431, 433, 443, 444, and 445. Some of them have salaries and some of them don't. So if you do that math right across, you got just short of 300,000. And you do hand it back to the department that can look at their budget and review and assess. And just like it has been said before, doing a budget is projection to the best of your ability what you think the government's going to need. And the government is based up of services, which would include beautification, if we had it like a senior center here. It also includes your infrastructure. It includes your police departments for safety. That's what the government is about. It is about providing a multitude of things to its citizens. And the accountability of the government is governed by the citizens. So it is really essential that the citizens do have a voice, they do have time to hear, read, and attend these meetings. But as we're sitting here and we're at the base of one more public hearing to vote on something, it really concerns me on the lack of how much time has gone into the review process. You can't really set up a meeting for just an hour, and tonight, these other people are waiting to have their meeting going. But if you look at this budget and you review at 10% and send it back to the department, and then they can work with getting the new numbers, and it would be really nice to get the new numbers a little bit earlier. I do ask for reviews of budget because I was in financing, government financing for 18 years. I have to take the time to digest and look, and I gotta add and subtract and do all those things. And quite frankly, I was doing that till 1:30 this morning on this budget. It is accessible, but it is a matter of giving and taking. And some things have to be cut, some things have to be put on the back burners. But one of our biggest agenda items, people, is we need two things to me, is to get these audits done because we're missing out on funding that would help our budget, and we have to get this water going. We have to get this well going, and we don't count money that we don't have in our hand. If we are fortunate enough to get some money from the state, that $800,000, and I've been in government when we were promised and never received, so please don't count on that money. If we do, we really need to look at a second well. Not necessarily are we growing tremendously here, but everything around us is growing, and water is our revenue. Wouldn't it be grand with all these subdivisions around us to sell some water, to make more, so that we can do some projects? It is at this point that we need to move forward as unity and not division. You know, these jabs and stabs get us nowhere within our community. I would really, really think we're all above it. But I like the suggestion, send it to the department and go ahead and do the 10%. Just crunch the numbers and verify the numbers. I did it fast, but verify the numbers and see if this can get us where we're at. And let's work on these other things moving forward in unity.
Thank you. Well, I would also suggest if we're gonna do the departments, I think that the council needs to really take a hard look and do we really need some of this? Because I think it's a little unfair to put in pork and ask for the departments to cut. I think it's gotta be, as you stated, some give and take. Again, I said that, I know it's an oversight on the developers. I live in Holiday Fields. I don't have sewer. My understanding was that it was promised when they built that development, but nobody held them accountable. So I've got septic, and I have no use of my toilet facilities when it rains more than 2 inches. So my wife and I have to use a camp toilet. Now, that's not your problem, but because the developer didn't do what they were supposed to do and what was promised, and nobody held them accountable. I got sidewalks, they're 2 foot wide, but I would rather have sewer, and I don't have it. Sometimes you just gotta put on your big pants and say, well, woe is me, but that's what I gotta live with. So I think it's reasonable to say, if we can do another hearing before the actual voting session, which will be if you want to do another hearing before the June 15th, and come to the table with something that shaves us down to a workable, but I think we've beat this horse, and we really need to close the public hearing and move on to the next phase. Yes.
Yeah, real quick, I'd like to just, to say, I added in the sale of the Public Works building for $150,000. I removed all of the contingency in all of the departments. I lowered the recreational activities back down to $10,000 from the $5,000 increase from the last meeting. That gives us $10,000 for, concerts or for Halloween or Christmas. I removed the projector and the projector screen that we were going to have installed here in City Hall. And then I took the beautification and tree committee down to $35,000 from $45,000. And that puts us in.
So why are you just taking all the stuff that you want to take?
I took everybody's contingency out.
I'm just saying,
You just said
I
contingency.
already took out everybody's contingency, which, whether we use it or not, means that we have to, any department,
Let's- Please,
Sorry.
let her finish.
okay, taking out every single department's contingency, taking out $10,000 of the 45 that was increased to from the last meeting in the beautification committee, $5,000 added the recreation committee. I'm doing this on a whim. We still have $86,900 that we need to cut. So with that being said, that is a difference from $349,000 just a little bit ago. So if, you know, you want me to really take a look at it and see, you know, where we can cut, if we're already cutting everybody's contingency out, you know, I'll be more than happy to do that and provide something to you tomorrow.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of having the projector, and of all the places that we're, you know, I like the idea of having the projector, that way the community can see everything, all the documentation that the council is looking at. So we have tons and tons of documentation that we're looking at through hearings, the processes that the citizens can't see, and this projector would allow the community to see what the council is seeing. I'm just picking that one thing out that you picked, that you whacked, that we really need.
Hey, can I make a suggestion? Can we schedule another meeting
Yes,
before,
I think it would be
because
a good idea.
we're getting late, and everybody please come and be willing to compromise on what we can and can't cut. We gotta be realistic about it, and
What day?
we got quite a few out, so we got to,
We're talking again next Thursday, what
um,
are we talking, Wednesday, what day? But, yeah, I think
we have time to get it in the paper before next Thursday, so we'll be looking at what,
we have to notify, and that'd be sufficient, and get it on our webpage and our Facebook.
I believe if we advertise it as a budget workshop and not another public hearing, then I think that we would be okay. We've already held one public hearing, you know, we'd have to have one public hearing. It would essentially be another budget workshop to work through the fine, we'll say kinks before the approval, of the budget adoption on 15th.
So you had us at 80,000 short with the things that you
As
cut.
those examples. With those examples, yes.
Yes,
We're 80,000 short.
86,000.
Okay. That's a lot better than where we were.
What day is everyone?
what day would be good for everyone. The only thing I ask is if we can make it no earlier than 6, please. I don't get off until 5:30 from work.
I mean, we could do.
Any day but
6:30.
Wednesday is fine for me.
You want to do it at 6:30?
She said Thursday.
Oh, is that what you said, 6:30, not 6?
Well, and just as long as it's after, 6 or after, but 6:30 is fine with me as well. Whatever day, it doesn't matter.
6 is fine with me, but I'm comfortable. I want to make it.
6:30.
I would keep it.
6:30 on, okay,
So on Thursday?
Thursday?
next Thursday, what is the date? 10th. I will, get it on the website, post it on social media. Scott's here tonight, so he can make note of it, June 10th, 6:30 here at City Hall. We'll have another budget workshop. And then the final budget adoption will be June 15th, on that following Tuesday, right?
That's what we have a schedule as.
Hopefully.
Okay.
All right. So, I'll close the public hearing for the budget, hearing. And, we have, opened the public hearing for, variances. Jerry White's not able to be here, but, I think, April, you are familiar with these, items. There's a a V 21-05 variance, a V 2106.
I can go through them and group them together since
Okay.
the variances are together and the rezone and annexations are together, so.
Okay.
Okay, we have two variance requests, V 2105 and V 2106. The applicant is, Sapphire Properties is the property owner, and Armentrout Matheny Thurmond is the applicant. They are asking to waive or modify the requirement of, this is to reduce the 100-foot buffer alongside the streams for 49.6 acres fronting on the south side of Jefferson Street. They are also asking to reduce the 150-foot impervious surface setback, also to the property that it lies on the fronting of the south side of Jefferson Street. These are map and parcel numbers ST04, 048, 049, 50, 51, and 114. They are currently zoned suburban residential districts, and there are three parcels. Two parcels are zoned SR2, one parcel is zoned rural residential. After the reviews by staff, we've sat with the applicant. We've discussed the project numerous times with the applicant. At one of our meetings, they actually originally had applied for a subdivision of 70 lots, and based on our meetings, they had decreased those down to 55 single lot homes. The staff findings for both variance requests meets the criteria and supports the request for the impervious setback and the buffer reduction. The applicant is here this evening, Mr. Rob Scott. Mr. Scott, if you wouldn't mind standing up and introducing yourself. And
Mayor and council, appreciate you talking to us tonight and reviewing our subdivision. We're looking forward to building a great little subdivision down on Jefferson Road. Like April had mentioned, we had grand hopes originally about putting a lot of houses on this. We thought we could rezone it for urban residential, but based on some feedback we got, we heard you weren't that excited about that. So we changed that. We really reduced the density. We got pretty good sized lots. They're all about a half acre now. And some of them, a couple of the estate lots are, 5 acres up on the hill. And that's in the RR zone. So we did all that. We're trying to keep the infrastructure costs down, like you guys, we have budgets too. And, but we really need those extra 7 lots, and that's where the variance is. All the other lots are fine. It's just 7 lots that are back by the creek. And it's not the big major creek. It's just a little auxiliary creek that's not even named. So that's really where we're asking for the buffer on. So hopefully you'll consider that.
I would also like to continue on that the variance for the 100-foot stream buffer. The total of 2 lots for the stream buffer variance is a total of 5,050 square feet, which is equivalent to 0.116 acres. So the actual variance for the stream buffer is actually very minimal. And then on the impervious 150-foot impervious setback, it is a total of 7 lots that are requested for this particular variance for a total of 46,011 square feet, which is equivalent to 1.05 acres total. So both variance requests are to be considered that they fall within the guidelines of permitting a variance, and the staff's recommendation is to approve both variance requests. Now, if you had any questions for Mr. Scott?
I do. Thanks for coming tonight, and thanks for your patience. When are you anticipating starting these?
All right. No, I was hearing your budget thing, I'm like, just get me approved and we'll get going. Yeah, we basically, if you guys approve the subdivision, we should draw it out within a couple months to get the final plat. My intention is to break ground on the infrastructure. We got to expand sewer, water, and roads, and we are intending on putting sidewalks. I heard that earlier.
I appreciate it.
On the side of the road in there. So that will take several months, probably 3 or 4. So my goal is to start building houses by the end of the year.
They are on the agenda for preliminary plat approval.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, there's no rezoning involved, so.
right, they're not rezoning. Initially, they wanted to rezone to get a higher density. After our meetings, they decided that they would be okay with just reducing the number of homes, keeping the existing zoning, and moving forward with the preliminary plat approval, which is on this agenda as well.
Thank you for sparing us that you are rezoning mess. We really struggle with some other communities that just didn't fit. We appreciate your response, and we look forward to seeing what you guys do. So would we be able to add their permits to our budget?
Yes, if we'll see how the June 15th meeting of the preliminary plat approval goes.
And I would say that, I know Mayor Piper talked to us in the 2 months ago when we set with you, and he said there's some concern about sewer taps that you got to prepay. So my intention is, once I get the preliminary tax, what I was going to pay the 55 times, I guess 3,500, it's a lot of money. But I want to
That's
cover
one
that
thing,
sewer.
yeah,
Well,
that is one thing that we
there's a
decided.
pile of money that we didn't
That goes for,
add in our budget.
it's
Well-
it goes for capacity.
It goes for capacity. So,
That's right.
And by the way, for those that may be interested, this is what they call the Holiday Brothers
holiday property.
property, and they sold. So, some are familiar being around town for, a lot of years.
And we're keeping all the houses, we're keeping the 3 existing houses, and the other houses will be kind of farmhouse style. Most of them will be ranches, probably some of them back by the 3 o'clock stores, and we're trying to squeeze it into small space. But we're gonna start off with ranches as long as they sell, that's what we're gonna keep the holiday house.
Yes, I actually reside in one of the holiday houses all the way down by the creek. So I just wanna know what does that mean, like going forward with everything getting built?
Just put your reflector.
Okay. I just didn't know because if the house was going to be torn down, or if we would have to move, we just wanted to know.
Well, we can talk to you about that on the side, but our intention would be to keep those, all 3 houses we haven't drawn in. So.
Okay. Yeah, based on the application, as the application was received, the homes that are currently there are intended to stay there.
I have a question that's not to do with the variance, just out of curiosity. I believe we talked about green space on this. Did you ever come up with a plan for that green space? Or
We just left it. You guys didn't seem super impressed about the park and all that. Although I'm still willing to figure out something on the well. If you guys still think, I know at one point we were going to test the water. I don't think it quite happened, but if you guys want to put a well down there, we could figure something out about that down by the lift station. Not too close to the lift station, but so that we pulled the green space off when we lost those other 20 lots. I think we're gonna put a trail back there,
Right.
but not,
It's in their packet. Smaller map, but it does show
it's
the
kinda hard
open
to
space
see.
and everything.
Yes.
Well,
yeah, it's definitely open, but we weren't gonna do, park.
that's all right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Scott? Moving on to annexation and rezone R2103, R2104, and R2105. Now, this is all, even though they are separate applications, this is all under one project. There are 3 parcels, 2 parcels which are currently in Barrow County, 1 parcel which is currently a Statham parcel. We are The applicant, Mr. Jerry Aubrey and Georgia REI Exchange, is here this evening. This is fronting the south side of Atlanta Highway for a total of 6.98 acres. It is currently vacant and undeveloped land, and the existing zoning currently is a C3 and an R4 for unincorporated Barrow County. The C3 zoning for Barrow County also allows multifamily, so it's, in a sense, it is currently zoned multifamily under the C3 zoning district. And the third parcel, which is already in city limits, is zoned as an SR1. The intention is the proposed use for these properties after the annexation and rezone is to create duplexes. That would be 26 units and 13 buildings. Let's see, this is a development that sits adjacent to the Winder Housing Authority. The applicant proposes 13 buildings, each containing 2 duplex units for a total of 26 dwellings. There is an existing detached single-family dwelling proposed to also remain. The proposed density of this development, if approved, would be 3.87 units per acre. Each duplex building would be between 2,000 and 2,400 square feet. Each unit would be approximately 1,000 square feet to 1,200 square feet. And each dwelling is proposed to have a 2-car garage plus additional parking spaces as well. Currently, it is under the public water supply, sanitary sewer are, typically serving this district. Let's see here. The current zoning is to not to exceed 8 units per acre, so they are under the units per acre. Let's see, planning staff views the proposed annexation and zoning to be suitable in view of existing zoning and development of adjacent and nearby property. The proposed uses in the 2-family dwelling is a good transitional use between the apartments to the west of the property and single-family dwellings to the north, west, and south of the property. Similarly, the proposed density is under 4 units per acre, and therefore appropriate in staff's point of view. And Mr. Aubrey is here this evening and brought his map of the
And this is
larger.
This is down by the transmission place on the highway, by the way.
It's just past the transmission place. It's, right before you get to Winder Housing Authority.
Yeah.
I saw the property for sale for a little while.
Yeah.
This is the name of the highway. Here's in this area is.
There's a little ways to get in and then it opens up.
I believe this is transmission, it used to be something right
It used to
here.
be Grizzle's convenience store.
A convenience store here, this is transmission.
No, that's it.
And then you got 3 homes and.
This area, this lot, and then, that's the, Statham lot right there.
Okay.
This is Barrow County, and this is Barrow County. So the Statham is only 0.53 acres, that's a small part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're trying to annex everything in here, and then you guys go to water, sewer,
So we're talking about annexing this right here, where the development is.
Yeah. This is already C3, as April said, which is, can be multifamily. But we wanted to make it contiguous. This is our Winder Housing Authority, so all this backs up to it and all that. And if we put a drive down here, then it's kind of close to another drive. We already have curb cuts in here from when this was originally built. It was intended for multifamily to go in here. So Winder Housing Authority says they have no problem with us using the curb cuts that's on their drive to access these 2 units.
Okay.
So we'll take this
Oh,
drive
I see.
that's here
Yeah.
and access everything else.
So when did you plan on starting?
Well, we're actually going to, sell the property, so it would be a matter of when the sale occurs.
Oh, so
We're doing the plan and everything for some other investors.
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to figure out if we can get that on the,
It'll have to go in July
I know where it
and,
is.
I'm sorry, yes, it'll have to go on the July agenda. Because of the annexation process and the procedures,
right,
you know, we've already, sent all the information to Barrow County. They have, a certain number of days to be able to respond to the annexation. And so, you know,
the county,
the county, because they can, they have an option to either allow us to continue with the annexation, or they can, say they don't want to allow the annexation, and then it goes into a different situation. But, if we can get it on the July agenda, first it would, we'd have to go through the process of the preliminary plat, and then the final plat, but, depending on how quickly he can sell it, we could, it's
I think most likely, probably, someone would, before the first of the year, start putting all the wheels
yeah,
in motion.
so maybe we can anticipate some revenue coming in from
I actually
this.
did, I did a little bit, under the final plat process. I did include this development for final plat fee,
Okay,
which doesn't seem like a lot, but it was all that I felt comfortable enough doing with. That is line 71.
I'm sorry, are you Mr. Oliver? I didn't catch
Yes,
that. And you said that you were hoping to sell the property. The people that, I noticed in the letter here that they'd be willing to work to upgrade the pump for Winder Housing Authority in this letter.
Yes.
The people that you would sell it to are investors, would they still be willing to do that?
To work with Winder Housing Authority?
Yeah, it says,
Yeah, that would be essential, really. There's going to, Winder Housing Authority has put us in touch with their engineers for the sewer system, and we've determined what upgrades needs to be done to their system to accommodate the additional usage. And their unit's pretty old already, it's 12 years old, so I think they'll be pretty interested. They are very interested in doing something with us. They just want to make sure that they're not going to be negatively impacted, by doing this, so which makes sense. Shelley Yon, this we've been talking to, who's the director of the Winder Housing Authority.
There's a list of conditions also in the application. Everybody has a copy of that on page 8.
Yes, I'll have 2 copies.
Under conclusion and recommendations.
If I have any other questions, okay?
Did you find that?
I got it.
Okay. On page 8, under conclusion and recommendation, it is recommended approval with conditions, based on staff's recommendations. You can see the different conditions, but the first condition would be to revise the site plan. The density would also need to be, we need to make sure that condition exists. The Winder Housing Authority approval prior to issuance of any building permit, and that we need to make sure we have a written permission from the authority, to be provided to the city for this development. Minimum heated square footage for each of the dwellings, garages, exterior building finishes, sodded yards, and Atlanta Highway road improvements. So, and then sewer capacity reservation, the same thing that we were talking about with the Holiday property. And we are now requiring developers to pay for their sewer tax up front. And the reason being is because we need to take that money and pay for the capacity to ensure that all the developments have the capacity. So, it would be required as part of the condition to pay for the sewer tax up front for the capacity, and to provide an inter-parcel access easement.
Any other questions?
Were there any other, questions for Mr. Albright? All right.
Okay.
Let's see. Resolution R2102 is the comprehensive plan amendment, and this is a resolution to amend the joint comprehensive plan for Barrow County and for the cities of Bethlehem, Carl, Statham, and Winder, the 2018 update as it pertains to the city of Statham as revised, or as amended to revise the city's future land use map 2040 and to delete the urban residential future land use category. The memo from the staff report says that since the adoption of the future land use map in the UDC in June 2020, it has become apparent that the residential densities allowable under the urban residential future land use category in zoning districts are higher than what the city has desired. Also, the densities allowed in the UR zoning district are coming into conflict with the water supply watershed requirements in the northern half of the city, which is regulated by the Bear Creek Water Supply Reservoir Protection Overlay District. To address the issue, staff has prepared an amendment to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan and deletes the UR urban residential category altogether. Further, the amendment would place a limitation on proposing or approving densities via a PUD, planned unit development. Lot sizes below 10,000 square feet would not be permitted in a PUD, nor would multifamily residential components with densities of more than 10 per acre would also not be permissible in the PUD. This proposal caps another potential avenue of increasing density in Statham. So in order to do this, we needed to have this listed under a public hearing because it is amending the Unified Development Code and it is amending the comprehensive plan future land use map for the city of Statham.
Okay, well, I may have missed it, I do have a quick question on that. If we're doing away with urban residential,
Yes.
what would those parcels, only on the future land use map, what would those parcels revert to?
SR2?
SR2.
Okay.
It would be reclassified as SR2.
Which would be like 4 per acre, something like
I don't
that.
have it moved right in front of me.
Because SR1 is like 2 per acre,
Right.
so if we would cut it down considerably, I think.
That's on sewage. Yeah.
So, all right, any other questions on the proposed UDC change?
Okay, the next item is ordinance 2106, which is also a Unified Development Code text amendment, livestock in residential areas. This is the first reading. It is an ordinance amending the Unified Development Code of the City of Statham, which was adopted June 30th, 2020, Article 3, specific use regulations to amend Section 3-014, backyard chickens in residential zoning districts, to reduce the minimum lot size required and to change the maximum number of chickens permitted, and also to amend Article 2, Division 3, use definitions, to provide additional defined terms, to add a new section 3-3-048, livestock and animal quarters, and to amend and renumber existing sections 3-048 through 3-076. This has been, written by Attorney Campbell and revised by Attorney Campbell a number of different times, and I believe that this is, well, I know this is the most recent version that he has emailed to us on Tuesday.
Any questions on this?
The next item is ordinance 21-07, UDC text amendment, zoning districts, and to rezone the official zoning map. This is the first reading, and this is to amend Article 2 zoning districts in the official zoning map of the city of Statham, urban residential district, Section 2-212, planned unit development district, and Table 2-2, the dimensional requirements by zoning district as it pertains to multifamily residential and for other purposes. So this goes hand in hand with the comprehensive plan amendment. So in order to amend the comprehensive plan by deleting urban residential as part of our future land use, we also have to do it for the city's official zoning map and to amend the planned unit development district. So we have to do them together.
So it will actually change.
Yes, sir. It'll change our future land use map because we will be deleting the urban residential, and that will be rezoned to SR2. And then it will amend the planned unit development zoning district. And we will also need to change it on our zoning map also.
Any questions in reference to the Q2107 UDC text amendment? Okay, at this time,
We do, I'm not sure if anyone signed up for citizen input for the public hearings, and this would only be for the public hearing citizen input at this time.
Yeah, I wanted to speak up for the silent majority, against the changing of the ordinance for the livestock. I know there had been some, impromptu questions on Facebook and things that said about, oh, yeah, we want it, it's not a big deal. That 200 and some people that was in favor of that is not the majority of the people in the city. I moved to city limits for a reason. I did not move into a rural residential area. I would like for it just to stay the way it is, and if people just tend to their stuff and mind their business, things could be as they were. If you violate an ordinance and it's blatant, then you suffer those consequences. But if you are a responsible landowner and you're taking care of things, I don't think we need to change an ordinance to accommodate the people that aren't following the rules. That's all I need to say.
thank you. Anyone else on the?
No one else is signed up.
No one else signed up, okay? So, that is,
We can close public hearing.
we'll close the public hearings, at this time. The items up for discussion. Is planning and development agreement renewal. Jerry Weiss has presented us a proposal for his upcoming contract, and I'm interested in allowing him to continue to do the planning and development for the city. This is for a 2-year agreement, which would take him from July 1, 21 through June 30th, 2023, to do zoning administration and planning services for the city.
And a copy of the agreement is included in all the council members' packets.
It looks like the same rates last year, is that right?
Yeah, I don't believe he's changed anything on it.
No, it's just renewal.
Next on the items is, well, first off, anyone have questions in reference to that agreement sent by Jerry? No questions, okay. The second thing is information technology services agreement. We have, as you can see, 3 bids. Bradley Electronics for $15,000 a year to take over our, basically service our cameras, computer equipment, and maintain our emails, meet email servers and the lot. So he is $15,000 a year, and that basically is unlimited. It doesn't matter if we utilize them for 10 hours or 20 hours a week. For the most part, we really have not used 10 hours, even with the current vendor. And we also have the, one of them is the $22,000 and one is $13,800. And my recommendation, because we have utilized Bradley Electronics for several things that we were able to get the service and get it less expensive. So my recommendation would be to go with Bradley Electronics as the city's technology service company. They're not the least expensive, but they're again, we would pay as we wouldn't have to pay anything extra unless we purchased additional equipment. So if we go over the 10 hours right now, then we get charged. And we've never really utilized the 10 hours for the most part, but it always seemed to be a reason why there was a charge. So I always kind of felt like we're paying for 10 hours, but there was always a reason why we had to pay more. There were a couple other things like an additional $150 in miscellaneous nuts, bolts, and screws on almost every addition that was made, and that's a lot of nuts, bolts, and screws. So I'd like to give another opportunity to Bradley Electronics. So if you all would consider that before our next, and if you have any questions, reach out to me, please.
Will he be putting up our new projector?
He would be able to do that. We're gonna have, no matter who we go with, we're gonna have to replace our server this year. I believe it's about 8 years old, and 5 is a stretch, I think, for any server. And of course, the nice part is it'll be about maybe a tenth that size, put out about maybe 10% of the heat that big beast puts out. So
Yeah, that's budget, or we have that in the budget to purchase a server, but when it comes to the time that we purchase a server, we'll go out and get, 3 different bids from 3 different companies. I'll compare an apples to apples, so we can make sure that we get the best piece of equipment for the best price.
Well,
I've
can we
worked
get,
with Bradley Electronics for years, and I highly recommend it. I'll just tell you that.
I highly recommend them too.
awesome.
they've really been good when we've had to reach out and utilize them. So any other questions on that?
I do want to mention that regardless with the IT services agreement, when I put in the information in the agenda, it is based, I put in for the total year. They charge monthly. So, whether it's, $11.50 a month or $12.50 a month, any way we go, the IT services contract varies based on the number of users, the number of emails, the number of workstations. So some months it might be $1,000, and then another month it might be $1,300 if we add more users to the network. And so I just want to make that clear that that can possibly fluctuate based on the number of users the city has at that time.
You know where that, it's on the budget. It's on, 32.
Where the IT stuff is in the budget.
It's under 150. If you go to line 206, it's under technical.
Okay.
Now, even though that is for the entire city and for all the departments, I just charge it to the general government and have it come out of one line item out of general government versus piecing it up between the police department has this many users, city hall has this many users, water department has this many, and so on. Just because it fluctuates so much, you know, I just keep it all in the general government.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mayor, I will abstain from the third.
Okay, so the next on the item on the agenda is a water and sewer money market asset account. That was something the council had just discussed a little bit, and was one of the accounts that basically could be dissolved and move that $140,000 into the purchasing of sewer capacity for the plant.
Yes.
Kind of get us a little bit of a head start. We are currently being penalized and paying penalties because we're actually over our capacity. So this 140 would help us kind of get ahead of that a little bit, and developers have been very open to paying tap fees up front to ensure that the number of homes that they would like to build are guaranteed to have a slot. So between those two, it would definitely help the city, I think, a lot. And you were going to say or show me something?
Well, everybody has a copy of this in your agenda packet. I think I wrote at the top, agenda item number 3, and it is highlighted as the water and sewer. And this is the account that the money is sitting in, and kind of going back to the fund balances that we were talking about earlier, this is a reserved fund balance, which means it's a restricted asset and it can only be used for certain things. Here's what the problem is, that the only problem that I'm coming up against. The reason why I have it on the agenda for council to approve to utilize those funds for sewer capacity, one, because it is a water and sewer money market account. So we know that the intention at the time that this account was opened was to be for water and sewer, number one. Number two, when I reached out to the bank to try to get as much information as I could about this account, it was opened in October of 1983. So I went back, actually Sandra did it for me, but she went back through the minutes because I was trying to find something, if there was anything that just happened to have said what the purpose of this account was used, you know, what it was intended for at the time of its opening. But again, that was in 1983. We know it's a restricted asset account. We know it was intended for water and sewer. If there are any other specifications at this point, we have not found them. They were never put in the minutes. So based on all of these findings, that's why I would just prefer for council to approve to utilize these funds for water and sewer, but specifically sewer capacity. And if you look on the, now there is $166,867 in this account currently. At this time, we are asking to only unrestrict $140,000 of the 166. So if you look in your budget under on line 102, on the very first page, you'll see that is Everything that falls under that category are our asset accounts, or our fund balances that are restricted. And on line 102, I created an account already for this money to be allocated to, because it's still restricted and we can only spend it on certain things. So I created an account, and you'll see that there is $140,000 in there. It is considered revenue because it is cash that we are putting into our revenue account. It is restricted. The offsetting account to the $140,000 is on page 4 in line 601. So the expenditure is exactly $140,000. So with council's approval to be able to utilize $140,000, we will put it in there as the revenue to offset the exact dollar amount as the expenditure, so we can pay for the sewer capacity that we are already over.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the Groundwater Services, Inc. This is a company that, back in January, the council approved to do the water, the well exploration. He has had several that he does like. One of them that kind of was temporarily taken off the table was the Holiday property, but you've given us a possibility of re-exploring. It was too far up on the hillside, so he wasn't getting good readings. But the one that he has found to be the best potential is at the Hillman Park. And so I wanted to extend the agreement with him. He said the agreement originally was agreed to was $20,000 up to $20,000, and he has not billed us that for full $20,000, but there are a couple of places that he does want to take another look at. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Do you have anything to add, Jordan?
Now, this part of the project is going to be actually drilling the well and to find the potential production of the well. And that's all right for you to give him permission to go on with this study.
Now, I would like to add that on the agenda, we have the cost not to exceed $13,000 for this particular phase of the well development. However, we received his proposal yesterday at like 6:10 p.m. and I had just left. Otherwise, I would have corrected it on the agenda. But the amount would actually be $18,500 instead of the $13,000 we had placed in there. We didn't know at the time what it was going to cost specifically. We thought it was going to be around $10,000, but we didn't realize that there was going to be a third part to the to this drilling. So I guess if the well flow is adequate and water quality is favorable, the test hole will be completed as a final well using an 8-inch under a separate proposal. So if I'm reading that right?
You'll be drilling 425 feet.
That's for that cost included in this.
Yeah, and
Right.
that is included in that, and if it is a viable source and can pass the,
At that time, they'll size the case and it will be completed as a final well with proper grout.
Right.
and then
That
become
part
a
would be
good source.
a separate proposal, but I think the way that everything looks, they're feeling pretty confident about this one particular one.
Jordan, are they actually drilling here for this 18
Yes.
Is that what they're doing?
That's what it is.
Yes. That's to see what
That's
that's
the
going.
8-inch,
That's 6 inch case.
and then if they get good flow, that's when we'll come back and.
Put it at 8 inch.
Yeah.
So,
I think at this point, the way that Jordan was explaining it to me, we know there's water there, and we know that this drilling is to find the capacity of the aquifer at what depth. right?
Right.
It's actually pretty
Quantity
exciting.
and quality is what we're looking for at this point. If both of those are great, then this will be at least one well site that will be a well production.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Good.
great. But, so in the,
And with the money left, if y'all approve it back in January, we'll look at another site or two that's more favorable, not more than this one, but more favorable numbers, and go with that.
What did we budget? I can't remember.
20,
Yeah, he said no more than 20, and he hasn't, I'm not sure exactly how much it's been, but he hasn't hit the 20 yet.
no, he is not.
But then this 18
Are we gonna,
is actually to drill a possible viable well. So,
are we gonna have to amend the budget to get this done?
Actually, you know what, hang on. And I feel like we put in 40,000.
It's 40.
We put in 40.
Okay.
But the reason why we had to approve it, because it was an actual agreement with this geological engineer. So, yes, we budgeted 40,000 for the beginning phases of the well development. We have only used, it's on your revenue and expenditure statement, that I gave you, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm guessing around 13,000. It's, you know, so, with your approval, at the next meeting, and with this agreement, we can probably put this in this current fiscal year.
That answers my question. So the whole reason why it's on this, next meeting to vote on is we have to extend the contract, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's already completed the first phase, and the second phase, and now we're into the third phase. So, because this is a separate proposal and a separate agreement for the third phase, then we needed council approval to continue moving forward with the project.
Okay.
any other questions?
But we will need to amend that dollar amount from $13,000 to $18,500.
And I think it's right around, because I'm gonna calculate, so.
Yes, so assuming, you know, upon approval, we'd have to approve this agreement for $18,500. And I believe I gave everybody a copy of that as well, his agreement.
All right, and the next item is preliminary plat for Charlotte's Place. The Charlotte's Place is 55 lots on 49.86 acres, fronting the south side of Jefferson Street. It's Sapphire Properties LP. Again, Mr. Rob Scott, and Trout, Matthew Thurman, PC, is present. Is there anything that we want to allow them to explain it, or you want?
Yeah, under, and everybody has a copy of this in their packets as well, but the applicant initially filed for preliminary plat approval for 70 lots, along with the two variances for the water supply watershed protection requirements to reduce the stream buffer and the impervious setback. Like I said, we met with them, planning staff. We raised a number of concerns with them regarding the redesign of the subdivision. The applicant has revised the preliminary plat and the variance applications to address most of all of the concerns raised by the city and council. They, like I said, they reduced the number of lots by 15 from 70 down to 55. And the two variance applications, which were significantly revised based on initial planning and staff comments, and they addressed everything, and really I'm going to say really took our comments and our concerns into consideration, and they resubmitted their final plat based on all of our recommendations and concerns before we're even, before we brought it to council for approval.
You're
So
short.
staff's recommendation,
Cut the-
is to approve You know, there are going to be some recommendations and notations that we would like to have required on the preliminary plat, which is all listed in the summary report that everybody has. But, you know, the conclusion of it is that their redesign of the subdivision in staff's view is appropriate.
Any questions on that? Any questions for Mr. Scott?
These are all single-family dwellings.
Any other questions?
Mayor, I would like, this is based on an email that I emailed everybody yesterday evening right around 6 o'clock. But I would ask for a motion to amend the agenda to add item number 6, which is the NEU award terms and conditions, is part of the American Fiscal Recovery Act. In the email that I sent everybody last night, which I have a copy of it here, we will need to have a signed and submitted terms and conditions of assurances agreement with the federal government in order for us to receive any funds, you know, from the American Rescue Plan Act. I attached a copy of it to the email last night, and you should also have a copy of it with you sitting at your desk, sitting in your seat.
Oh. So do you need a motion to amend the agenda now?
To add this to the agenda because I didn't receive this until after we submitted the agenda to everybody and to the media.
Okay.
So.
I'll make the motion, we amend the agenda and add item 6 for the American Recovery Act and Plan.
I'll second. All those in favor? Okay, all unanimous.
Yeah, Sandy. Wait, yes or no?
Yes. Oh.
Oh, no,
You voted no?
no,
Oh, okay.
I don't know
So-
enough about it to vote.
All right.
So was it 4-1?
4-1. Alright. So that's, as she said, it's in your packet. The big difference between the first round that we had from the corona, that was kind of automatic. You had to fill out a bunch of forms, which April did, and that was in 2 phases. This one, we have to apply in order to get the funds, so a little different than the first time around. But that's what it pertains to. So, okay. Is there any citizen input on any of the items that we just discussed above?
I'm David Matheny, I'm with Armor Trout and Thurman, and Athens, working with Rob Scott on the engineering for this. All I want to say is what she said. All I need to say. Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience too. I know it's a long night for everyone. So,
Mary has signed up to speak, Mayor.
okay,
Yes, it's not in reference to anything that we have discussed tonight.
okay.
And I'm going to honor your wishes and just agree, I'm gonna look directly at you.
Okay. I got broad shoulders.
Excuse me?
I have broad shoulders.
Okay, that's the land stuff on.
Okay.
I think these girls are in danger. I don't know if you were here on May the 7th, but I have a hideous police report in front of me. I have a council person that came in here, and it was an ugly, ugly scene. So, the police got involved, they took reports, and these girls should not have to fear for their life when they come to work. And if I were you, I would see if maybe that person could Zoom in or something rather than be here when these people are here. That's it.
Okay,
If you want to see the report, I've got it right here.
all right, thank you. The last item on here, first section 2.20, Statham Code of Ordinances up to 5 minutes to speak, which you've done under that. And I don't believe there's any other questions, so we can move on to minutes approval. We have minutes from 3 different meetings that we held. May 18th, that was a regular meeting. We also had a budget work session May 18th, and we did a budget workshop on May 27th. And you should all have those available to you. I believe, and you might have to check with the attorney, but I believe they can all be approved if there's no questions or amendments or corrections to any of them. They can all be voted on and approved in one fell swoop. So any corrections to any of those minutes, or any questions? If not, can I have a motion to accept the minutes for the regular and the budget on May 18th and the budget workshop on May 27th?
Motion we approve.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
I'm abstaining as I wasn't here.
Okay, so, Tammy abstained because she wasn't present. So we have 4. And can I have a motion to adjourn for the night? Motion. Can I have a second? All right, a second, and all those in favor?
Your second.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's patience and get up and dance around and get some circulation.
We have places back there.
Good night. Congratulations on that, baby. Yeah, I bet you would.
I know.
Thank you.
I wish I'd known it.
It's been a pleasure working with you guys.
Good night. Thanks.
No, you better.